Hello, my name is Strat Maluma with ALP California. I also serve as the California lead for the ALP Fraud Watch Network right here in California, which is a free fraud prevention and education resource that's available to anybody. Our network is all about helping communities avoid fraud and scams through information, education, events, as well as resources. I want to thank you for joining us for the second in a series of interactive weekly fraud prevention conversations that we're hosting throughout October. I hope you'll join our conversation by sharing your comments, your experiences, your thoughts, and your questions right in our comment section. And as always, as we get to the end, for many of us, the reality is that we're increasingly living our lives online. Whether we connect with family and friends on social media, we work online, we play online, we even shop from everything from customers to cars online. And many of us, we do all of our financial transactions online. At the same time, we're sadly hearing constantly of one major data breach after another, in which personal information or sensitive information has been compromised and used. So what can we do? I'm talking to Dave Morrow. Dave has over 35 years experience in cybersecurity investigations as well as incident reports. He also has a wide-ranging military career, which I must say very impressive. He served for 12 years as a special agent for the Air Force on the special investigations, specializing in computer-related crimes. He's also done a number of cyber incidents responses and threats for major U.S. banks, and he has testified in front of Congress on cybersecurity and those sort of issues. Dave, welcome to today's conversation. Very excited to be talking to you.
Thanks, Strat. So today,
So, Dave, to get us going, can I ask you what are you going to be sharing with us today?
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is how to help you avoid becoming a victim of cybercrime. We talk about cybercrime in kind of abstract to a lot of people, but there's things you can do as a person to stop avoid being a victim, and we'll talk about those, and we'll talk about some of the frauds that are out there also. So, if you guys are ready, let's get started.
Let's get going.
So today, what I want to talk about again is cybercrime and how we deal with cybercrime. Hang on, I'm having a hard time with my screen now. We want to make sure that here we go. Identity theft and other types of online fraud are, pose a serious risk and a growing risk. In 2019, according to the FBI, there were almost 500,000, 467,000 online fraud complaints that amounted to over about $3.5 billion worth of problems. And that's just the instances that were reported, and we think that's very, very underreported. So probably some experts say that less than 1 in 10 of the incidents of cybercrime actually get reported to the FBI. So as you can see, there's the gold mine of the internet for the scam artists, and the number of people who get caught in the scammers' net, it grows every year. And as you can probably tell, the true volume of cybercrime is really unknown. What we do know is that criminals continue to use a variety of scams to defraud internet users, ranging from simple frauds to complex hacking issues. And I'm trying to change the slides. There we go. There we go. Sorry. So what we're trying to do today is give you some training on make you understand some of the basic precautions you can take to make yourself less likely to be a victim of cybercrime. It's not going to make you 100% safe. The steps that we talk about are just the beginning of the process of developing a mindset of trying to make yourself a harder target for cyber criminals to exploit. And that's what we're really trying to do. In this discussion, we'll talk about the practices you should develop to keep your personal information private online, and how to avoid losing control of things like your social media accounts, Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, and those accounts to the cyber criminals. We'll also talk about how to bank safely online, which, despite the scary headlines you see in the press, is really statistically safer than walking around with a large amount of money in your pocket from visiting your local bank branch. Finally, we'll give you some things to look for to help you recognize and counter phishing messages that we all get. So first of all, let's talk about what we call general cyber hygiene. We call general cyber hygiene is those habits and precautions you need to adopt to protect yourself online. Exercising good cyber hygiene will help you reduce the risk of becoming a victim, no matter what you're doing on the internet. Now, I like to say that, like a physical town that you live in, there's bad neighborhoods on the internet. Websites that deal in pornography or online gambling and unofficial mobile device application sites or cell phone device application stores and pirated games, all of those are known to prone to hosting malware and bad stuff. That's not to say you can't get in trouble from anywhere else on the internet, because you can. It's just that these types of places are often found to harbor malware and other bad things. Cyber criminals are like anybody else. They tend to hang together just like other groups. And so avoiding trouble means not visiting the sites that cater to them, like hacking forums and dark websites and online marketplaces. Now, I get scoffed at sometimes from folks' audiences, because they say, well, we won't go to that. And that's probably true. We're not going to find too many of our generation hanging around the dark website necessarily. But that doesn't mean that that's the same for our children or our grandchildren who may be visiting us, and we let them use their computer. One of the things we try to do is tell you to limit the amount of personal information you make available on the web, especially on social media, to what you absolutely have to have. This includes, the information you put in your profile, because that information can be used by the cyber criminals to do bad things for you. And we'll talk about more about social media in a few minutes. Just remember that posting your day-to-day activities and personal or family information to social media like Facebook or LinkedIn or any other, Instagram, may seem natural and it may seem fun, and it is. It's a good way to keep up with family. But just remember, you're always giving that information away to the public. And anyone with bad intentions can also access that information and can use that information and turn it against you to target you or the people you're connected with, your loved ones and friends. Now, basically, what I'm trying to get you to think about here is that most of us have heard enough horror stories and warnings about bad things on the internet to develop what I call the sixth sense, right? What may be dangerous. So if you don't come away with any other message here, if you have a little voice in the back of your head when you're doing something online that tries to warn you when you're about to do something unsafe, listen to that voice. Because what I find over the years is that many, many, many times people who have gotten themselves into trouble online did so in full knowledge that they might not should have done this, but they did it anyway. So if you have that little voice going off in the back of your head saying this is probably not a good thing to do, you need to listen to that voice. Some other things you may need to do, remember that even if you follow the safe browsing rules, as I said before, others you allow to use your computers may not follow those rules. This especially applies, and I've got stories of my own personal life where my daughters, my grandkids have come, and I really have to monitor my grandkids because, they're 13 and 12, and they are, or 13 and 8, and they are very active in places online, and it's pretty scary how easily they can fall into problems. The three major browsers we use, Firefox, Edge, and Google Chrome, all have they're all rolling out capabilities now that will automatically, that you don't have to turn on, will pop up and warn you if you try to go to a website that is known to be unsafe. And if you get one of these warnings, if you get a pop-up message that says, hey, you're about to go to a known phishing website or a website that is known to host malware, don't go to the site unless you're absolutely sure you know what it is and that it's safe. Because again, that's some things that the browser manufacturers, the tech companies, are trying to put in there to help people identify sites that are known to be unsafe. A lot of us get pop-up messages asking us to install new programs. When you do that, don't just automatically press OK unless you have asked for the program or the application. And if you don't know what it is, don't do it. It's a good rule of thumb is if you didn't ask for it, no matter if it's a program or if it's a text or it's an email, if you don't know where it came from and you didn't ask for it, then delete it. Don't open the text, don't open the email, just delete it and move on. Many hackers will try to capitalize on your confusion at receiving an unsolicited text or email to install unwanted software or to get your personal information. Also, if you don't use a program or an application on your phone or on your computer, if you're like me, over time I've accumulated programs on my iPhone that I don't use anymore or rarely use, and I periodically go through and remove those because every program you have on there is a potential problem, and if you don't use it, it doesn't need to be there. An increasing number of sites are offering means to protect your accounts in addition to the standard passwords. We'll talk about passwords in our next couple of coming up slides, but these programs, these enhanced protection programs, if you will send you a text or an email with a confirmation number that you need to enter after you enter your password, because we know over time passwords have been around since the 80s, and so they've kind of lost their effectiveness in many ways, but we still use them. But we've tried to augment them with other things, and maybe a number they text you or a secret question or something like that. That you theoretically only you know the answers to, but you need to periodically go through and change those also. Put a new password in there or a new secure question if you're allowed to do that, and change. If you feel like you've gotten a password's gotten compromised, if you've had an account taken over, your email account started doing weird things and you think it was a problem, then you need to change that password. Speaking of passwords, the one step you can do to help protect yourself online is to use a really strong password, because hackers exploiting the easily guessed passwords are the easiest and most common way hackers gain access to accounts. Passwords like this on here are just easy for these guys to do. They know they're out there, that this is some of the first things they'll try, or they have automated tools, hacking tools that will try to use these passwords automatically the first time. Again, the one single step that you can best do to secure your accounts remains using strong passwords, and it's really kind of a shame the more people don't do that. One of the things that every year there's a company called Splash Data that it's a security company, and they publish a list of the 100 top worst passwords that they've encountered in the last 12 months. And in December 2019, they published this list, the 2019 top 10 worst passwords. And as in past years, the number 1 and number 2 passwords haven't really changed. They basically sometimes flip sides. Number 2 becomes number 1, but in the end of the day, probably the top 5 to 7 of these things are always the same. So again, year over year, people use the same passwords, and they're easy for these guys to guess, and you don't want them to do that. So how do you not have a bad password, an easy password? Well, we've all heard the traditional advice, a complex and random set of upper and lower case characters, special characters like ampersand or pound sign or whatever, numbers, all put together in no recognizable format, not an English word, and that's still good advice. People for years in the security community have been saying that passwords are going to go away, but we don't see that happening. We know that passwords are going to stick around because they're so widespread use. So what we've had to do is, as I said, build some supplemental or augmentation capability to make passwords harder to deal with. But the government now says that one of the things that they suggest a way around everybody having to use all these, people tell me I don't want to use these crazy passwords because I can't remember them. And that's true. So one of the things, and we'll talk about, show you an example on the next slide, the government has suggested that one of the things you might want to do is think up a phrase that you'll never forget, having to do with whatever application you're using, if it's your banking application or whatever, and take the first letter of each word in that phrase, and you can easily, as long as you can remember the phrase, you can remember the password. Also, if you add more numbers and characters to the end of this, it'll make it even stronger and make it harder to guess. But above all, avoid reusing passwords. Change them every now and then, at least once a year, and don't have anything that's a recognizable English word or a sequence of characters or keyboard characters or whatever in there, because those are well known. There we go. So what makes a strong password? Again, our technique of creating a phrase that makes sense to you. I'm from Washington State, so we have an example of AARP #1 in fighting fraud in Washington State. That would be that password there. The problem is we tell you to have a different password for every one of your websites or stuff, so you'd have to think of all these different phrases. So there's another way you can do this, and it's either the old-fashioned way of having a little ring notebook or a pad of paper where you write down all your passwords, and if you're the only one that's ever going to see that pad of paper, and you don't keep it on your computer where a hacker who talks his way into your computer can get access to it, if you keep it written down on a piece of sticky, a yellow sticky note beside your computer, then fine. But another tool you can use is what's called a password manager, and we use password managers to help you, or a password vault is something else they call it. And that's a program that allows you to automatically sign on to websites, sign on to applications, because you've stored your passwords, you've stored your user IDs and the website location in a program that encrypts it, and it's available for you to use with your own master password, and nobody else can get access to it. There's several different types of password managers out there. There's one called 1Password. There's one called LastPass. There's one called Dashlane. All of these usually have free or pay versions, and they can automatically fill in strong passwords for you. They can, if you need to come up with a new password, they can generate one. Almost all of these allow you to generate them. The password file itself is encrypted, and it'll either be stored on your computer or in the cloud. And the only thing you have to do is make sure you have a strong master password, which is just like having a key to a safety deposit box, right? That master password is something you want to always remember, and make sure you maybe even write that one down somewhere. But password managers are available. You go to magazines like PC Mag, PC Magazine, their website, I think it's PCMag.com. They have a lot of lab reports, and they do testing of password managers and antivirus and a lot of tools for personal computers. You can go there and look and see the various different manufacturers and choose the one that you believe fits your life the best. There's some other tips we have for keeping yourself secure. One of the things, as we talked about before, is passwords are kind of old. We've been around for a while. So we have put in something we call two-factor authentication to augment your password, to make them stronger. And you probably already use two-factor authentication without even really realizing it. Most online banks, for example, require you to answer the secret questions or ask you to give them your cell phone number, where they can text you a 4 or 6 digit number before you log in. So you'll put in your user ID, you'll put in your password, and then they'll send you an email or a text that has a 6 digit number, and you type in that number, then they let you in. That's two-factor authentication. More and more banks have to do this. If they're a federally insured bank, they have to have this kind of protection on your account already. And more other programs like Facebook or Twitter are using similar methods to prevent your accounts from being hacked and being taken over. If you find, you should make it a habit, make it a practice as part of your cyber hygiene. If you find a place online that you're using an application or a website that offers two-factor authentication, that allows you to sign up for receiving a text message to add to the end of your password or whatever, please sign up for them, because that's the way we have strengthened passwords over the years. The second thing you need to do is make sure that all the applications that you have on your computers are updated. Probably the second most popular way for hackers to get into companies, for sure, is to take advantage of applications like Outlook or any application that is known to be vulnerable, hasn't been updated to fix the vulnerability, and they know that, and they have tools that can take advantage of that. To combat this, the best way to do that is to make sure that whether you use Windows, you have Windows Update, or if you have an Apple, that iOS, the operating system for Apple, will automatically update your software without you even having to know anything about it. That's the easiest way to make sure that your software is up to date. If your computer doesn't have automatic updates, or it's not very reliable, you want to basically set yourself a time, a day, the first day of every month, to go through and see if there's any software that needs to be updated. Most times you can go to the manufacturer's website, or Microsoft Live Update will if you go in Windows to the Live Update setting, you can click on it and it'll go out and check for it for you. Finally, we really want to tell you, don't fall victim to the common practice of using the same password for your bank account that you use for Facebook, that you use for getting onto your fraternal organization's website, because hackers count on this. Password reuse is the technical term we call it, and that's one of the first things hackers test. If they can get your password, if they break your password or somehow figure out your password because you've used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're going to take that and your user ID, and they have a program that will try thousands of websites, which, whether or not you have an account there is immaterial. They'll try to see if you've reused that password somewhere else. So if they get hold of a user ID and password that they know it works, they'll try that one in thousands of other websites and applications automatically. They go to banks, they go to Facebook, they go to all kinds of social media. They're betting on the idea that people are lazy, and that if one is they don't want to have a bunch of passwords, so they just use the same password over and over again. And if the password is compromised one place, chances are the individual, the owner, has reused that somewhere else, and that's what they're trying to take advantage of. And this not reusing passwords is especially vital for your financial applications, your banking, your investment sites, as well as social media sites. So how do you stay safe on social media? Speaking of that, well, again, most of the hints we've talked about password discipline and not reusing passwords work for social media accounts just as well as for email or texting or whatever. There's some specifics about social media that we also feel like we need to tell you about. We have all heard recently about the existence of fake social media profiles, but this issue has really existed for as long as social media has existed. And there's really no 100% effective way to secure your social media accounts, but here's some hints that will help you. First of all, be really, really conscious of who you accept friend requests from. Don't friend people unless you actually physically know them in the real world, or you know that they are legitimately people. There's at least one social networking for business site out there that used to, I don't know if they still do, offer little badges for your account. If you remember, the bigger your network got, the more little badges you got. And there were people who would basically post on their social media account, I accept all friend requests, because they're trying to get the little badges or something. This is incredibly dangerous, because basically you're inviting people who who are not who they say they are, to come in and be your friend. And then if you have your social media account set that only your friends can do certain things, then they're in your living room. They're basically doing those things. So while refusing a connection request from strangers may seem pretty unfriendly, what I want you to do is think about accepting connections or friending someone as the cyber equivalent of letting them into your house and inviting them to sit down in your living room, right? Would you let people you don't know or who you have really no common interests with or other reason to associate with into your living room in the physical world? If that's true, if you say no, then don't friend people you don't actually physically know. And be aware too that if somebody gets there, I've seen this happen on my Facebook account where I've gotten friend requests from people who I know were already in my friends. And so that's when I, call them up or send them a text offline and say, hey, I think your account's being spoofed or taken over by somebody else. You need to be careful. Also, a lot of applications will want to use your location, your contacts of your data or the data that you have. Always when you have something pop up that says, allow this program to use your location or allow this program access to your contacts file. Ask yourself if you're better off sharing that, if you really want that to happen, because especially with location and contacts, there are a lot of programs out there that ask you for these things, and you don't have to give it up. And for some reason, my location, okay, if my GPS program wants to know my location, that's kind of needed, but other things don't need your location necessarily. So don't be afraid to say no. Ask yourself if you're better off sharing, because they're going to ask you, your notes program or your Microsoft Word program or whatever may ask you to share your location or your contacts. And unless you want that to happen, don't let it happen. Finally, don't use the button that you see a lot of times on websites that say you can join us with Facebook instead of having your own user ID and password. You can join us using Facebook or join using Google. This is problematic to use this because what you're really doing is allowing this application, this company or whoever that you don't know to have your Facebook account privileges, to have your user ID and password, or at least to share access to your Facebook with it. And if that company goes out of business or Facebook goes out of business, then you may lose access to the other things you've shared with, as well as, this is a company that may or may not be as safety conscious as Facebook is and may not protect your user ID and password as well. And other accounts can be compromised if you use that. So we tell people be very, very careful and don't use that capability. One of the things that we find, though, is it's really startling now how many appliances and commonly used home devices want to connect to your home network. If you have a home Wi-Fi network, I've got all kinds of, I installed a new washer and dryer when I moved to Washington State a couple of years ago. And the first thing they wanted to do was hook into my home network. And I wouldn't let them do it because I couldn't see any reason why my dryer would want to have access to my home network. I don't care if my clothes are dry and my cell phone sends me a text message to tell me my clothes are dry. I'll walk downstairs and see. But we see that a lot of the alarms and surveillance cameras and things like Alexa and Google Assistant, the smart TVs, and even things like refrigerators and washers and dryers all urge you when you install them to hook them up to your home network. The problem is the devices like these, which is what we commonly call the Internet of Things, are not very well secured in many cases. And frequently, they don't have any instructions on how to connect securely to your home network that's included with the instructions when you use it. So just always remember, it's your choice to put these things online or not, to put these things on your home network or not. If you do, you want to take some steps to secure the thing online when you do.
Thank you, Dave. That's a lot of real great information you shared, and I really have some real great takeaways. I like the information that you shared about children online. It's something I think we often take for granted, especially with a lot of kids schooling from home right now. So it's really important to make sure that we secure, whether it's our devices or where they go online, to stay safe. Also, the social media part of it, we often share too much on social media that I think can make us a little bit vulnerable to scammers and hackers. And one thing that I know a lot of folks are going to find useful is the information that you shared around managing passwords. I know here where I work, I have to change my password, I think, every 90 days. And keeping track of those can be a challenge in itself. So creating something like a password phrase is helpful, and I think makes it more easier. But also using a password manager to help us come up with real meaningful and impactful passwords, I think, is another way that we can stay protected. Well, we have a few questions if you don't mind.
Okay.
The first one is here from Grace Sonia. Does Dave have thoughts on Touch ID applications on smartphones? Thank you, Grace Sonia, for being with us. Dave, question?
Yeah, I mean, I use them because biometrics is what that is. The facial recognition or touch ID applications. I presume that's what you're talking about, Grace Sonia, is using your fingerprint or your thumbprint to get into your smartphone. Uh, yeah, I mean, I use those because it's a lot harder for at least at this point, a hacker to simulate my face or simulate my thumbprint than it is to guess my password.
Excellent. Also with us is Bruce. Hello, thanks for joining us, Bruce, and thanks for your question. He asks, how do you create a strong password?
Well, hi Bruce. The main thing you do is use again upper and lowercase letters, numbers. Avoid having an English word, avoid having any kind of word in any language or necessarily anything that's recognizable out of a dictionary is dangerous. Make sure that you have special characters and numbers and just randomly put those in there. Again, if you use the password manager that we talked about, it's a lot easier to generate those because they'll generate one for you itself.
Excellent. Here's one about protecting your data on the computer. How do spam filters work? We get so many emails which are basically spam, and I think clicking on some of those is what gets us in trouble. So any thoughts on those?
Yeah, spam filters, either the ones you have built into things like Gmail or Yahoo Mail, or the ones that you can buy, all work kind of the same way. They try, they know what spam looks like. It's smart. It's this smart artificial intelligence kind of logic that they can recognize either through the subject line. They have a library of subject lines for known spam emails, and that gets updated throughout the day as new ones come on. They'll use the subject line, and if it matches the known spam mail, then it's be filtered out. They also know spam emails tend to ask for some of the same things or have some of the same language in them, and so they have this, again, artificial intelligence in the program that looks at emails coming in and sees if it matches some of the things they know usually are asked about in spam. So then they filter them out, and either you don't never see them or they quarantine them, so you go in and say whether they're really spam or not.
Fantastic. All right, so here's our last question, which is an interesting one. It reads, I plan to get rid of my computer and get a new one. How can I make sure that nobody can access the data on my old computer?
Well, that's a very good question. When you get rid of your computer and you recycle it, or even if you take it to the dump, you want to make sure that it is wiped entirely of data. And there are programs out there that will wipe your computer of data, or you can take it to some place like Best Buy or something, or your local computer store, and they can wipe it for you. But you never want to turn in your computer or your smartphone without having that data wiped entirely removed. And there are tools, if you feel comfortable using them, there are tools, data wiping free tools that will wipe your data online that you can just download, or you can take it somewhere. But you never ever want to just throw a computer out with the trash or take the computer to the used computer store, because you're giving away your data.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Dave, we've come to the end of today's conversation. I want to say thank you. This has been extremely helpful and informative conversation, especially with October being Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The information that you shared is timely to just as a reminder of some of the things we can do to stay safe as we go about our business online. I really want to take the time to thank you for your time. I also want to thank all those folks who joined us for your questions, contributing to the conversation. I appreciate that, and hope you will join us for our next conversation, which is next week on investment frauds and scams. In the meantime, as always, if you have questions about fraud, or if you want to find out for a loved one, I'm not sure about this fraud situation or scam situation you may be facing, please contact our AARP Fraud Watch Network. They can be reached at 877-908-3360, or you can visit them online at aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network. Thank you very much for being part of today's conversation, and goodbye.
Thank you.